Amina's home was once filled with laughter. She and her husband Mwangi had worked hard to build their 3 mud houses. They were a happy family, living peacefully in the village of Kijiji with their 2 children, Wanjiku and Kamau. Amina would cook delicious meals while Mwangi worked in the fields. In the evenings, they would sit outside and watch the sunset, feeling proud of the life they had built together. But everything changed when Mwangi got sick. It started with a small cough, nothing too serious, or so they thought. "It's just a cold," Mwangi said, trying to smile. But Amina noticed the worry in his eyes. Days passed, and the cough didn't go away. Instead, it got worse. Mwangi became weaker, and soon he couldn't work in the fields anymore. Amina did everything she could to make him better. She made him warm soups, brought him herbs from the village healer, and prayed every night for his recovery. But no matter what she did, Mwangi's condition kept getting worse. He became so weak that he could barely sit up in bed. One night, as Amina sat by his side, Mwangi took her hand. "Amina, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I wanted to take care of you and the children, but now I don't think I'll make it." "Don't say that, Mwangi," Amina replied, her voice shaking. "You're going to get better. You have to." But deep down, she was scared. She could see how sick he was, and she didn't know what to do. The next morning, Mwangi's condition worsened. He could barely breathe, and Amina knew it was serious. She called for the village healer, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. Mwangi passed away, leaving Amina and the children alone. Amina's heart was broken. The man she loved, the father of her children, was gone. And as she held her children close, she couldn't help but feel a deep fear. How would they survive without Mwangi? Little did she know their troubles were just beginning. The air in Kijiji village was heavy with mourning. Mwangi had been a good man, loved by many, and his death was a great loss. But for Amina, it was more than just grief. It was the beginning of a nightmare. It started at the funeral meeting. The elders of the village, along with Mwangi's family, gathered to discuss how the funeral would be arranged. Amina sat quietly, her heart weighed down with sorrow. She could barely listen to the discussions, her mind lost in memories of her life with Mwangi. But soon, the quiet whispers among the villagers grew louder, and Amina realized they were talking about her. "She's the reason he's gone," whispered one of Mwangi's cousins, loud enough for Amina to hear. "Yes, she must have done something," another relative added, narrowing his eyes at Amina. "It's not natural for a young man like Mwangi to just die like that." Amina's chest tightened as she looked around the room. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mwangi's eldest brother, Juma, stood up and pointed a finger at her. "We know what you've done, Amina," he said sternly. "You bewitched our brother. That's why he fell ill and died so suddenly. You've always been jealous of his success." "Jealous? How could you say that?" Amina cried, tears streaming down her face. "I loved Mwangi. I would never hurt him. But the accusations kept coming. We all saw how you treated him," Juma continued. "Always making decisions without asking him. Always thinking you knew better. You're nothing but a witch." The room erupted into murmurs of agreement. Even the village elders, who had once respected Amina, began to nod their heads. Amina's sorrowful mood grew heavier, like a dark cloud that she couldn't escape. She was grieving the loss of her husband, and now she was being blamed for his death. The funeral went on as planned, but Amina felt like an outsider in her own life. No one comforted her. No one offered her a kind word. Instead, they all watched her with suspicion, whispering behind her back. After the funeral, Mwangi's family came to the house where Amina and the children lived. Juma was leading them, his face stern and unforgiving. "This house belongs to us now," he declared. Amina, holding her pregnant belly, looked at him in shock. "What do you mean? Mwangi and I built this house together. It's our home." "Not anymore," Juma replied coldly. "You have nothing here, Amina. We're taking everything that belonged to our brother. The houses, the land, the farms, everything. If you had the power to kill Mwangi with your witchcraft, then you can survive on your own without his belongings. But where will we go?" Amina pleaded, her voice breaking. Juma shrugged. "That's not our concern. You should have thought about that before you took our brother from us." Without another word, they began to take everything. They even took the cooking pots and blankets, leaving Amina and her children with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The villagers watched in silence, no one daring to stand up for Amina. She felt like she was being cast out like a stray dog, unwanted and alone. As the sun began to set, Amina and her children were forced to leave their home. They walked with heavy hearts, the memory of Mwangi's love, and their once happy home now a distant dream. They had no place to go, and as Amina looked down at her children, she wondered how they would survive. But even in her darkest moment, Amina knew she had to keep going. For her children, for the memory of Mwangi, she had to find a way to survive, no matter how impossible it seemed. The mud house near the swamp was nothing like the home Amina and Mwangi had built together. It was small, dark, and cold. The roof was made of old, rusty iron sheets that rattled loudly whenever the wind blew. The walls, patched with mud and sticks, seemed ready to crumble at any moment. And the floor was always wet, a mixture of mud and water from the nearby swamp. Amina stood in the doorway, looking at the broken walls of the house she now had to call home. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She had to be strong, even if everything around her was falling apart. Inside the house, Njogu and Kamau huddled together on the damp floor, shivering. The cold air from the swamp seeped into their bones, and the sound of mosquitoes buzzed in their ears. Amina could see the fear in their eyes, and it made her heart ache. She knew she had to do something, anything, to make this place feel like a home. "Come here, my children," Amina whispered, her voice trembling. She pulled them close, trying to warm them with her own body. "We will be okay. Mama is here." "But Mama," Njogu said softly, her big eyes looking up at Amina. "Why did they take our house? Why did they say you are bad?" Amina's heart broke at the question. How could she explain something so unfair to her little girl? "It's not true, Njogu. Mama didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people say mean things when they are sad or angry. But you must remember that Mama loves you very much, and we will find a way to be happy again." Kamau, who had been silent, looked up at Amina with tears in his eyes. "Mama, I miss Baba. Why did he leave us?" Amina's breath caught in her throat. Kamau's innocent question hit her like a blow to the chest. How could she explain death to her young son? She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "Baba didn't want to leave us, Kamau. He loved us very much. But sometimes, people go to a place where we can't follow. But he is always watching over us, and he wants us to be strong." As Amina held her children, the roof began to leak. Water dripped onto their heads, and soon, small puddles formed around them. The rain outside was heavy, and it seemed like the whole world was crying with them. "Mama, I'm cold," Kamau whispered, his little body shivering in Amina's arms. Amina tightened her hold on her children, trying to shield them from the cold and the rain. "I know, my dear. I know. We'll get through this. I promise." But as the storm raged on, Amina felt more and more hopeless. The mud walls began to crack under the pressure of the water, and the floor became even more slippery. The constant dampness made everything worse. They had no blankets to keep them warm, no dry clothes, and barely enough food to eat. "Mama, will we ever be happy again?" Njogu asked, her voice trembling. Amina looked into her daughter's eyes and saw the pain and fear there. She wanted to promise her that things would get better, that they would find happiness again. But the truth was, she didn't know how they would survive in this broken house, with no one to help them. "We will, Njogu," Amina said, though her voice was full of uncertainty. "As long as we have each other, we will find a way. We must keep believing that." But deep down, as the rain continued to pour and the house around them seemed ready to collapse, Amina wondered how much longer she could keep that promise. How could she protect her children when everything was falling apart? How could she keep them safe when the world seemed so cruel and unforgiving? In the small village of Kijiji, news traveled faster than the wind. The day after Amina was thrown out of her home, the entire village knew about it. People gathered in small groups at the market, by the well, and outside their mud houses, whispering among themselves. "Did you hear what happened to Amina?" one woman said to another, her voice low and filled with suspicion. "I did," the other replied, leaning in closer. "They say she's a witch. That's why Mwangi died so suddenly." The whispers spread like wildfire. Everyone seemed to have a different version of the story, each more twisted than the last. Some said that Amina had poisoned Mwangi, others claimed she had cursed him, and a few even believed that she had made a deal with dark spirits to gain wealth. But they all agreed on one thing: Amina was dangerous. But there were those in the village, especially the older women, who knew better. They had seen Amina and Mwangi working side by side in the fields, building their home together with love and dedication. They had watched Amina caring for her children, always with a smile on her face, despite the hardships she faced. One afternoon, as a group of elderly women sat outside under the shade of a large mango tree, they talked about the situation. "It's not right," Mama Wairamu, one of the oldest women in the village, said quietly to her neighbor Nyambura. "I've known Amina since she was a little girl. She's not a witch. She loved Mwangi with all her heart. They were a good family." Nyambura nodded in agreement. "But what can we do, Mama Wairamu? Mwangi's family is too powerful. If we speak up, they might come after us too. And with all these rumors, even if we wanted to help, people would be too afraid to stand with us." Mama Wairamu sighed deeply. She knew Nyambura was right. Mwangi's family had connections in the village, and they were known for their harshness. No one wanted to risk their own safety by defending Amina. But it pained her to see the young woman suffer so much, especially when she knew how kind and hardworking Amina had been. Meanwhile, Amina sat outside her new home, holding Wanjiku and Kamau close. She could hear the whispers every time she went to the market or passed by the village square. People who used to greet her warmly now turned their heads away, as if she carried a curse. "Mama, why don't the other children want to play with me anymore?" Wanjiku asked one day, her small face full of confusion. Amina's heart sank. She had noticed how the other mothers pulled their children away whenever Wanjiku and Kamau approached. "It's not your fault, my child," Amina said softly, brushing her daughter's hair. "Sometimes, people are afraid of things they don't understand. But you are a good girl, and that's all that matters." Kamau, who was too young to understand everything, looked up at his mother with wide eyes. "Mama, are we going to stay here forever? I don't like this place." Amina forced a smile, even though her heart was heavy with sadness. "We'll stay here for now, Kamau. But I promise, one day things will get better. We just have to be patient and strong." But even as she said those words, Amina felt the weight of the village's gossip pressing down on her. She knew that as long as the rumors continued, it would be difficult to find peace. Every day she prayed for a miracle, for someone to come and help her, but deep down, she knew that she was on her own. The villagers continued to watch from a distance, too afraid to get involved, and the rumors grew stronger with each passing day. And so, Amina's days were filled with loneliness and sorrow, as she struggled to survive in a world that had turned its back on her. The day started like any other for Amina. She was at the market, trying to sell a few vegetables she had managed to grow near the swamp. Her clothes were tattered, and her face looked worn and tired. The once lively and joyful woman was now a shadow of her former self. As she arranged the little produce she had on her mat, she noticed a man approaching. He was well-dressed, with a confident stride that stood out among the village folk. Amina squinted her eyes, trying to see who it was. As the man got closer, her heart skipped a beat. It was Njogu, Mwangi's old friend from their school days. He used to visit the village regularly, buying cocoa seeds and sending them to the city where he sold them for a good profit. He was known as a wealthy man, someone who had made it big in the city. But today, his visit wasn't about business. Njogu stopped in his tracks when he saw Amina. His eyes widened in shock. "Amina, is that you?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Amina looked up, her eyes meeting his. She tried to force a smile, but it quickly faded. "Yes, Njogu, it's me." He knelt down beside her, his heart heavy with sadness as he took in her appearance. "What happened to you? Where is Mwangi?" Tears welled up in Amina's eyes. She hadn't spoken about Mwangi to anyone in a long time. Mwangi is dead," she whispered, her voice breaking. Njogu's eyes widened even more. "Dead? How? When did this happen?" 6 months ago, Amina replied, wiping her tears. "He got sick, and no one could save him. After he died, his family took everything from me. They said I was a witch, that I killed him with my magic. They threw me and the children out, and now we live in that broken mud house near the swamp. Njogu shook his head in disbelief. Amina, I can't believe this. You? A witch? That's nonsense. I know you. Mwangi loved you so much, and you loved him. How could they do this to you? Amina looked down at her hands, worn and calloused from hard work. I don't know, Njogu. I don't know why they hate me so much. All I wanted was to raise my children in peace, to honor Mwangi's memory. But now we have nothing. Njogu clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. This is wrong, Amina. This is so wrong. I won't let them get away with this. Amina looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time in months. What can you do, Njogu? They are too powerful. No one in the village dares to stand up to them. Njogu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I have friends in the city, Amina. Lawyers who can help you. I'm going to take this case to court. I promise you, I won't let them treat you like this. Amina's tears flowed freely now, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Thank you, Njogu. Thank you so much. I didn't know where else to turn. Before Njogu left, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bundle of money. Here, take this. It's not much, but it should help you get by for a couple of months. I'll come back next week, and we'll take this to court. Amina accepted the money with trembling hands. Thank you, Njogu. You don't know what this means to me. As Njogu walked away, Amina felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would get better. But deep down, she knew the battle was far from over. She would have to face Mwangi's family in court, and she wasn't sure what the outcome would be. Yet, with Njogu by her side, she felt a little less alone, and that gave her the strength to keep going. The day of the court hearing finally arrived. Amina stood nervously outside the courthouse, holding Wanjiku and Kamau's hands tightly. Njogu was beside her, his face serious but kind. He had promised to help her, and now the moment of truth had come. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Mwangi's family sat on one side, their faces hard and unforgiving. Amina sat on the other side, her heart pounding in her chest. Njogu sat next to her, giving her a reassuring nod. The judge entered, and everyone rose. The trial began, and Mwangi's family was quick to accuse Amina of being a witch, claiming she had caused Mwangi's death. But Njogu's lawyer was well prepared. He presented evidence of Amina's hard work, her love for Mwangi, and how the couple had built everything together. He argued that the accusations were nothing more than lies to take away what rightfully belonged to Amina. Amina felt a lump in her throat as she listened to the lawyer speak. She never thought she would be in a place like this, fighting for what was hers. But she knew she had to stay strong, for her children and for the memory of Mwangi. After what felt like hours, the judge finally spoke. I have listened to both sides, and it is clear that the accusations against Amina are false. The properties that were taken from her are to be returned immediately. Amina's heart skipped a beat. She had won. She had finally won. Tears streamed down her face as the judge continued. Amina, you are a hardworking woman who has suffered greatly. You have the right to live in peace and raise your children in the home you built with your husband. Mwangi's family looked shocked and defeated. They had lost, and there was nothing more they could do. Amina couldn't believe it. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. As they left the courthouse, Njogu turned to Amina and smiled. You did it, Amina. You're going to get your home back. Amina smiled back, her heart full of gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Njogu. Thank you for everything. Njogu visited Amina and the children often after that. He would bring them food, clothes, and toys for Wanjiku and Kamau. The children loved him, and they always asked their mother about him. Mama, Kamau asked one evening, is Uncle Njogu our new daddy? Amina smiled softly, brushing Kamau's hair. No, my dear, he's not your daddy, but he's a very good friend who cares for us very much. Wanjiku looked up with her big, curious eyes. Why can't he be our daddy, Mama? He's always here, and he makes us happy. Amina's heart ached at their words. She knew Njogu had become a part of their lives, and the children saw him as more than just a friend. She didn't know how to explain the complicated feelings in her heart. But as the months passed, Njogu's visits became more frequent. He helped Amina rebuild her life, and slowly, she began to see him in a new light. He was kind, caring, and always there when she needed him. He had stood by her when no one else would, and for that, she was deeply grateful. A year later, on a bright sunny day, Njogu asked Amina to marry him. He wanted to take her and the children to the city, where they could start a new life together. Amina's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, saying yes to the man who had become her rock in the storm. The wedding was simple, with only a few close friends and the children, but it was full of joy. Wanjiku and Kamau were overjoyed, and they finally had the father figure they had longed for. Amina couldn't believe how her life had changed. From the depths of despair, she had found happiness again. Njogu kept his promise. He took Amina and the children to the city, where they lived in a beautiful home filled with love and laughter. Amina never forgot Mwangi, but she knew he would be happy to see her smiling again. She had found a new beginning, and this time, she was determined to make the most of it. And so, Amina's story ended not in sorrow, but in hope. She had faced the darkest days, but she had come out stronger, with a new family and a new life. The village of Kijiji would always remember her strength, and her story would be told for generations to come.